Welcome to Africa's Big Switch. On this episode, we had a conversation with Kristin Wilson, the managing partner at Innovate Africa Fund. Kristin is an experienced angel investor with a robust and active investment portfolio, serving as the LP advisor at We Capital, an investment lead for the Rising Tide Africa Angel Network. Kristin focuses on leveraging technology and data to drive growth for SMEs and startups in sub-Saharan Africa. We explore a journey building Innovate Africa Fund. This is Africa's Big Switch. Hi again, my name is Balaji Akinlali and I'll be the host for the Africa's Big Switch podcast episode today. Joining me today is Kristin Wilson. She is the managing partner for Innovate Africa Fund. Hi, Kristin. How are you doing?
Hi, Bolaji. I'm good.
Nice.
I'm enjoying surprisingly good weather actually in Accra.
Nice. I'm jealous of the weather. Where I am right now is really hot. But anyway, Kristin, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So, like you mentioned, I am managing partner at the Innovate Africa Fund, which is a new baby of myself and my partner Kristin Diodi. And the reason I say that in response to a question about myself is because I think the fund is at this point in my life almost like a culmination or like the right point of the things that I'm passionate about and the things that I'm trying to do. So um, I'm keen on entrepreneurship and enabling entrepreneurship. For a long time, I thought I was going to be a doctor. I thought I was going to be a surgeon, and I was planning my life to be able to do that. Um, and then the more I interacted in that space, the more I thought about inequities in healthcare access and delivery, the more I felt like I needed to be doing something around essentially economic prosperity and like wealth creation. And they say health is wealth, right? But I think literally putting money in people's hands is like mission critical for us on the continent. And so I began to restructure my life and my work to enable entrepreneurs, right? How do we get from, hustlepreneurs and subsistence businesses into growing businesses, thriving businesses, scaling businesses, regional giants, global giants, right? How do we create the kind of security and freedom to dream that comes with security for young African people? And that just became like the mission of my work, was enabling entrepreneurs to be able to create prosperity in their community. So I did a lot of learning about the ecosystems, about the economy, the constraints, the challenges. But then I also did a lot of work as a freelancer, as a management consultant, as an advisor, as an investor, angel investor. Um, and then in 2021, I started working more intentionally in the venture capital space, uh, you know, learning about VC, but also working, advising VCs, supporting with due diligence, helping them think through their due diligence frameworks and their interactions with founders. And, I invested in a couple of funds. So I sort of, amped up my game from just like investing as an angel to investing in funds, becoming an LP advisor, eventually becoming a venture partner with one of the VCs that I was working with. And also launching my own company that was meant, that is, and currently works as a bit of an ecosystem enabler, focused particularly on the question of talent and optimizing and building talent for this next phase of Africa's prosperity journey. So today, where I'm at and who I am is somebody that is finally bridging, the opportunity gap and the growth enablement gap for entrepreneurs by helping, bold innovative, um, you know, founders and builders to access and generate capital that allows them to really solve problems in a sustainable and transformational way for the continent. So yeah, that's my long answer to that question.
No, very, very interesting. And the reason why I say interesting is because like you can kind of see the journey. Like I like how you went through that journey, and for someone listening, they might be like, "Oh, it seems quite straightforward," but I'm sure it wasn't a straight line. I'm sure you kind
No,
of
it's a hot mess. Like it's funny because for a long time, for many many years, people would kind of look at my LinkedIn profile, or I don't really have like a real CV. I have something that's like CV adjacent, and they'll just be like, "I don't get this. Like, I don't get what this is." Like, people used to tease me like, "Are you a spy? Like, you." It doesn't. I don't get what you're doing. Like, what do you do today? You're in Kenya. Tomorrow you're in Mozambique. Like, what are you doing? And so for a long time, I think it wasn't clear to people, even though for me it's always been crystal clear. Like it still is what I'm driving toward, right? I love your reference to Joe early on when we were speaking, because he's one of my favorite interlocutors, because we think a lot together about um, this next phase of the continent and our role in it, right? And so, even though for a lot of people in the past, and I'm sure even now today, it's hard for them to kind of understand what exactly is this motion, this thing that she's building, what is this track that she's on. But I think for me, it's pioneering a path for entrepreneurs, right? For enabling radical, transformational, beneficial wealth creation at scale for bold innovators, and like that has just meant doing a lot of learning. I think a lot of my work, a lot of the opportunities that I've said yes to, the opportunities that I've said no to, have really been about how do I understand the challenges of building here in Africa better, right? How do I understand and be able to think through and connect the opportunity and um, the talent landscape in a place like Rwanda, that is intentionally both at the level of like the national project and at the level of like the entrepreneur and the individual, thinking about being a place that attracts investment and that drives prosperity for people, and then connect that to a place like Somaliland, where you're seeing people setting up hubs and incubators and micro funds to trigger entrepreneurship. Really thinking about, because growing up, I learned and heard a lot about our potential. I think by the time I was a teenager, by the time I was in uni, there's all this talk about how much entrepreneurship we do on the continent. But something that I was always struggling to reconcile was, okay, if we have all this activity and we have all this entrepreneurship drive, where's the productivity? Where's the prosperity? Um, and so building a life, building a career, and driving work and projects that allow me to, one, understand the deficits and the challenges better, and two, help, right? Contribute something, scale something, redefine something in a way that increases its likelihood for scaled or transformational impact. It doesn't always look clean, right? And it doesn't always make sense, and it's not super easy to like pitch in 1 to 2 sentences. Um, but it's definitely like been rewarding, you know.
I can imagine. I love what you said about where are the areas to improve productivity and allow for prosperity. And I really believe that as well. I really believe in scalable entrepreneurship. And I'm a firm like it sounds like you've read this book, this book by Efosa Ojomo on prosperity paradox. Because I feel like some of the things you're saying is just like reminding me of that book. Am I? correct? No?
Yeah, it's so interesting because in one of my previous lives as a management consultant, there was like a phase in the work that I was doing where they were obsessed with his thinking. He and his partner's thinking out
Mhm.
at Harvard. I forget. I think it was like Christensen. I think
Yeah, Clay
that's his,
Christensen.
yeah, exactly. That's his thought partner. Um, and there are things about that framework that I definitely agree with. This idea of um, understanding the challenges and leveraging that to create prosperity. But I think there are also elements that like I don't quite agree with about the framework. But yeah, definitely read it. I
Mhm.
think about it a lot, and I definitely spent at least a year even writing. I did some reports and some analyses with the Harambeans
Mhm.
about, thinking about companies on the continent in line with some of the frameworks that Afosa had defined in his book.
Really cool. Okay, so let's talk about the how now. So you've spoken about Innovate Africa Fund, kind of the drive towards creating this baby and what you aim to achieve. And it is an angel fund.
Hmm.
I think my question is, how does this how is this different from another angel investment syndicate? How do we want to bring this vision to life?
Right. So I think the way a syndicate works is you've got folks, right, different angel investors, and they see a deal. I'm a member of many syndicates that are doing incredible work: Oak, Rising Tide, Dakar Network Angels. And the idea is, oh, even Warobia Angels in Tanzania recently joined that, so that's really fun. But the idea is with a syndicate that you are seeing opportunity, right? Somebody is sourcing, people are sharing, and then you are pooling capital. So you're like, oh, who's interested in this deal? And then people say, oh yeah, I like this deal. I'm going to give 2K, 5K, 10K, 20K. I've done deals with angels that are as large as 300K USD, right? With 10 of us or whatever, right? Now, here's the thing: syndicates are great and are so mission critical on the continent where wealth is so inequitably distributed and access to capital is just not institutionalized in a democratized way. But the thing about syndicates is also their capacity for, um, how do I put it? Their capacity for really, really deep work supporting founders. So if you think about the kind of like idealized life cycle of a company, it's like I have an idea, right? I spend some time tinkering with it. Maybe I mobilize a couple of people to build with me on it. I test a few things. Um, I, mobilize my earliest customers. I learn some hard lessons. I figure out some of the things that I need to do. I realize I need a little bit more capital. So I reach out to, some strategic investors, angel investors, financial investors who can just give me that initial, boost to unlock that next phase of my problem solving journey. Now, ideally, in that framework, your angel investor is thinking with you and supporting you. They're making your first introductions, they're hyping you on their group chats, they are looking at your financial model, they're thinking about who you should be thinking about as your potential advisory board members and so on. They're your first advisors. The thing about syndicates is it's really hard to do that, right? It's a bunch of deals coming through. You're doing, maybe if you're an active angel, 5, 10 deals a year. You're not directly interfacing with the founders. It's being done through whoever's working for the syndicate as an investment analyst or whatever. So that proximity, right, to the founder's challenges, to the founder's journey is hard to hack in a syndicate model, because an angel syndicate is basically, it's like a fund, but without um, how do I say this properly? The structure, right, makes it such that you're not interfacing that portfolio support, that portfolio, that founder engagement, that one-to-one early stage osmosis of ideas that happens with the best kinds of angel investors, right? And many of our best angel investors invest through syndicates. That's the truth. But there's just no the design of that framework makes it really hard, right? Um, but what that means is that, but we know we need angel investors. We need their capital. We need their insights. We need their initial validation of our ideas as founders so that larger checks can come in, more capital comes in, more, the right sorts of questions are asked and answered, and so on and so forth. So the thing for us with the fund was saying, okay, how do we get the best of both worlds, right? How do we take, the very, very best models of early stage venture investing, right? So now I'm talking not about angel syndicates, but venture capital at the early stages, is also very good at that portfolio support, right? It's very tactile, it's very hands-on, it's if you get the right early stage VC investor, they can make the difference between your company being at 10 versus 1,000x, right? And so the question was, how do you take that principle of intentional portfolio support, intentional drive towards founder, um, like exponentializing the founder's journey, and how do you match that with the agility, the risk appetite, the angel, right? Because the angel is investing in the valley of death, right? What some people call the friends, family, and fool stage, right? They're investing before it's really, really clear that this even could be something, right? Not even like this is something, this could be something. And they're doing all of that brunt labor of essentially providing validation and catalytic capital, especially on the continent where early stage VC on the continent is actually more akin to like seed plus stage at in other more mature venture markets. Do you know what I mean? So what is us of a pre-seed founder or pre-seed plus founder on average across the continent is much more than would have been asked of them if they were raising in Texas or California, or London. You know what I mean? And so angels on the continent do a lot of that work that ordinarily in a more mature ecosystem, early stage VCs would do. Do you know what I mean?
I
And
do.
so the idea was to bring some of that philosophy. My partner Kristin has worked with the Silicon Valley product group for a long time, and so the idea, and I lived in Silicon Valley for a while I was doing my PhD, and so for us it was like, how do we bring that daring and fearlessness and pioneering of taking risk on really, really huge but unclarified bets that have massive positive transformational potential. How do we do that? Um, and how do we design a model, a fund model that allows us to do that, that's appetizing, that's interesting, that's galvanizing, and really brings support to the ecosystem and all the great work that is being done by the angel syndicates, by the VC funds, and even now in a place like Nigeria, even policymakers, right, who are switched on and thinking critically about how they can, ramp up what the entrepreneurs have been doing in the tech ecosystem. So it's really just joining that effort, right? Rubbing minds, because something that we say a lot is like it takes a village, right? And I mean, you're Nigerian, you're African, so I'm sure you've been in those conversations where we talk about and we lament how little we support each other, how little we collaborate, how much more like the insert other minority ethnic group we should be like, right? Um, and for us, we know that behavior is happening, right? But perhaps it's not happening at the level of skill and consistency and visibility. And so it's like, how do we become part of that? So in fact, in our conception, we just want to be almost like a connector, like a partnership vehicle. That we're saying that for especially post 2021 and the dips of 2022 and 2023, where Mandem are clutching their purses and just being like, no, I'm not, putting in money. I'm not taking these bets. There's too many bad actors. I'm not funding some of this jackpot or
Yeah.
frivolous lifestyle. Let's create something that gives people a high level of confidence, that is an institution that is subject to many of the same kinds of, you know, strictures and accountability that a fund would be, but is designed with intent to catalyze, is designed with intent to take on that early stage risk, but with the right sorts of like an ecosystem around it, right? So at Innovate, we don't just have a fund, we have a foundation. We have that is thinking about entrepreneurship and product leadership, and thinking about leveraging the product operating model and supporting, organizing events. So, like the foundation, one of our flagship programs is something called the Inspire Africa Conference, where we bring product leaders from around the world, bring them together with founders for about 4 days of just intensive hands-on thinking and ideating and problem solving for their businesses and around the product model, right? But it's not just that. There's also Work Nigeria, which is the first in a series of work in certain African countries where we're thinking critically about job creation, right? Placements, matching, and so on and so forth. Um, there is the Product Leadership Accelerator that's training young talent that's interested in technology in the product operating model, helping them to think about the right sorts of principles around product development, around product development for problem solving. One of the things that I often tell folks that I work with is it's not just about building your organization, your company, like the right way. It's also about building the right thing for the community, right? So it's like, how do you build the right thing right? And so having infrastructure and a sort of like non-profit framework to be able to drive that intentionally. PLA, Work Nigeria, then there's of course the fund. My company Spirit is essentially a massive enabler across the continent, 15 countries now, where we've been thinking not just about technology, but or let me say, not just about digital technology, but also the social technologies, the design thinking, the systems thinking, um, bringing principles of management leadership and global thinking to SMEs, to small businesses, to family businesses, helping folks to really move the needle for their companies. Digital, we do a lot of digital transformation work, even eventually launched a whole line of people operations products that are designed to help SMEs, family businesses, but also even startups in some cases, to digitalize their work, optimize their teams, and scale out the work that they're doing. So the fund isn't just like showing up in this void of nothingness and saying, oh, hey, we have a fund, we'll invest and we'll hope for the best, right? We're really sitting in an ecosystem of entrepreneur support, founder support, team building, and employment enablement, plus then capital, right? Expertise and so on. You know what I mean? So it's and then of course there's everything that's happening with the syndicates, with the hubs, with the incubators, and so on and so forth. So the idea is to take a strategic lens with the fund that says, when we invest, because we invest really early, right? We invest, we're putting our founders, giving our founders access to all of this stuff, right? To all of this talent, to all of this expertise, to all of these resources and networks. A huge part of our mobilization for capital in terms of raising the fund and all of that. And the partners that we work with are, operators, people who've built companies, scaled companies in other emerging markets on the continent as well as, of course, in I guess, more developed markets as well, and bringing them on not just as financial investors, but as, strategic investors, as advisor, as advisors, coaches, sounding boards, leaders of, working sessions, and so on and so forth. So the principle here is that we're an angel fund because we're doing a lot more, even more than an early stage VC would do, because we've built out an ecosystem between Christian and I's networks. Christian and I's work as operators, as advisors, and consultants and enablers of businesses to be able to help the early stage founders that we're backing to move further along in their journeys. And we really see, I was telling you, I spent a lot of my early, learning career in the sciences. And a critical word for us, watchword for us, is catalysis, right? And so we're not trying to force the issue, right? So we're not trying to make things that don't exist. We're saying, what's going on that needs to be accelerated, right? What's going on that needs to be amplified? What's going on that needs to be scaled? What are the hubs or the syndicates or who's doing interesting work in Somaliland that we need to be amplifying and bringing visibility to, right? Who's doing interesting work in Nigeria, or Cote d'Ivoire, or the Congo, right? And how do we bring catalysis to that, so that's the principle, and that's the work of the fund. It's we're not thinking about it just like the syndicates or even the early stage VCs. I know I've spoken a lot, forgive me, but I hope that's been like explanatory.
Look, I was enjoying this like, what is, like, wow, I like it. So
I
what
appreciate
is
it.
what is clear to me, Christine, is that you really understand the markets. And me being a, should I say, baby angel investor, especially in comparison to you, I like it- that structure, that support is not natural. Like, you rarely see that, a situation where all the angels are so involved and they want to bounce ideas. Also, like, the relationships are a bit weird. Like, people don't really know how far the angels should kind of come in, because you don't kind of want to like make the founders do anything. But what is clear is, like I said, like, your understanding of the market, and I really want to, I guess my next question is on that, in terms of earlier on when you were introducing yourself and introducing Innovate Africa Fund. You mentioned thinking about the next phase in the continent. And I really want to understand that. Like, what do you mean by that? What phase are we in terms of the startup ecosystem?
Yeah, happy to share. And I will caveat this by saying that, look, we all think that, just as a function of our narcissism as people, we all think like we're the heroes of the stories we're in, right? And so obviously from our vantage point, we feel like this is a critical time in the continent's history. I'm sure 50 years ago people felt like it was a critical time, and they were probably right. um, and why do we feel like it's a critical time? For us, the mobilization of technology, the democratization of technology, the pushes for and against globalization, the massive size of our population, the usefulness of said population, but then all of the problems, right? The poverty, the lack of skilling, the lack of opportunity, all of those things are for us crystallizing in some very, very interesting and rapid innovation. Sometimes I think people don't think about the fact that we've done a phenomenal amount of catching up to the world with less than 30% internet penetration. I know there's a lot of grimness about the future of a continent and our leadership and blah, 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 blah. But like, there's also a really, really good data driven argument that we're going to hack this thing and that we're on the right track if we, again, catalyze the right things. Because when you're able to produce 9 unicorns, you're able to produce global companies, you're able to produce sustained and sustainable businesses with all of the issues that we have, the bad governance, the lack of infrastructure, the lack of access to technology, the fact that our teachers don't have updated curriculums. If you think about all the problems, right, I'm sure we all know them, right? All the terrible things that were done to us in school that we didn't learn right and so on and so forth. But we figure it out, right? And we are cracking, financial inclusion at a really impressive pace. We are giving people access to opportunity, helping them to build better lives right from where they are, not just Jackpa, right? And for me, what that means is that if we catalyze the right things, if people like me, people like you, people like Joe are thinking critically about where is our own version, how do we build the 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 open markets, how do we build the free zones, how do we think about a you know a switching bank that works for the continent, how do we think about a talent pool that works for the continent, how do we think about education, right? If you even think about all of the work that people like Fred Swanecker and Patrick Ewa have done around formalized education and creating pipelines of reliable talent that is interested in the continent, that is working for the continent, and the success of that mission. I think that all of those things coalescing, in addition to the investment that has come into the tech ecosystem, the products that are coming out, even the challenges, right? The growing pains that we're having. We're at a moment where when in VC, that hockey stick, right? If we do things right, we can unlock prosperity at an exponential level for everyone, right? We can screw it up and it'll be a mess, right? And we'll figure it out. But there's also, I think, for us, because of where technology is, because of where the continent is, because of what we know and what we've seen is possible in places like India, in places, like China, we know that we can do this and we can do it faster. We can do it in less time. We can do it with less inequity. We can do it with less pollution. You know what I mean? For me, that benefit of knowledge, that benefit of being able to mobilize our diaspora is incredible, right? Whenever I'm even in like far-flung places in the world, right? You're in Poland, you're somewhere, and you meet Nigerians, right? I mean, some of our earliest developers for my company were sitting in places like Poland and in Ukraine, Igbo boys, Hausa boys, just building their lives, going to school, but being like, what, let me go and work with companies in Nigeria because I want to build something. That's the kind of people we are, right? That for me gives me all of the like ginger, right, as we say, to keep going, to keep catalyzing, to keep finding those pockets, those light bulbs, and shining even brighter lights on them, So
Wow,
that's
yeah.
at the moment we're in. I think that we're on the cusp, and it's just about us staying the course.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. That's a really good answer, and I agree with you. There's so much happening, and like I think one of the reasons with this podcast kind of highlight all of this, especially from people who are currently doing the work and can currently see the challenges, but also the opportunities. So thank you for sharing that. I guess the follow-up question to people listening to this, is probably, and to including myself, is how can I get involved, especially in terms of Innovate Africa Fund? Like, sounds
Yeah.
super cool, super interesting. Like, it seems like there's gonna be a lot of like, movement over the next year, 2 years, but how can I get
Mhm.
involved?
Honestly, there's a seat at the table. It's taking a village. We need the whole village. I You can become an investor if you have the capital to be able to do so. And if that's something that you're interested in, you can just reach out directly to manager at Innovate Africa Fund .com, and we can start to have those sorts of conversations, do the necessary KYC, blah blah blah. But that's I think for me just like scratching the base of it, right? There is We really really want champions of our innovators, champions of our founders. We want people who have been sitting in their small cold flats in London or in New York and thinking I should really go build something. I've been thinking about this for 10 years. I've been playing with this. We want them to consider taking that leap and saying, hey, reach out to us, at founder at innovateafricafund.com and say, yeah, I've been thinking about this idea. I've been thinking about doing this thing. I'm tired of this job I'm doing at Goldman or whatever, or at Dangote, and I think I want to do this. Um, and reach out to us and let's have that conversation about your journey and what you can unlock for the continent. If you have free time and you've been thinking about volunteering or coaching, if you want to teach skills, if you want to share insights, if you've made mistakes or you've seen people make mistakes at companies that you're working in or you've worked with that you want to share with founders, that you want to share with builders and with teams, reach out to us because we want to galvanize the village. We want eyes on the ground and ears on the ground, and we want people to tell us across the world, across the continent, there's something really critical happening here. So whether it's dropping a tip for us about something incredible a founder is doing or a company is doing, whether it's coaching our founders, whether it's training, whether it's investing, whether it's becoming a founder yourself and working with us to get your project off the ground. I think there's something for everyone, really. And we really hope that especially for Africans and lovers of Africa who are listening, that they reach out to me, reach out to us, and let's just even first have that conversation. Let's figure out how we build together, because one thing that Christian and I are solid and clear in our minds on is that we need to do this in partnership. We need to do this with um, with the diaspora, with the locals, with the public sector, with the private sector, with the straight laced and with the fast paced, all at the same time.
Agreed. You're building the market, you're building an ecosystem, so it's all hands on deck. So I completely agree with you. And Christine, I'll call you. I'm really liking what I'm
Please
hearing.
call
So
me. No, for real, I'm gonna drop my number. So yeah, please. I mean that wholeheartedly.
okay, nice. Love to see it, and I think this is coming timing for me as well. Feel like you threw a shot on me there, but it's okay. Um,
It's good. It's good. The spirits. The spirits are saying the things that they need to say to who needs to hear them.
fair enough. So we're rounding up. We're coming towards the end of the episode. This has been really fun. I've really enjoyed and learned so much. Just from speaking to you for the last couple of minutes. But we have a final question, which we always ask our guests. And if you listen to any of our episodes, you probably can guess what it is. But it is, if you were to travel anywhere in Africa on an all expense paid trip, where would it be and why?
So I've still not been to Madagascar, and when I was growing up, I met a few people from Antananarivo, and I just loved hearing about their experiences and their city, and so it's a place on my mind. So that would be it. All expenses paid. I'm going to Madagascar. I just want to see it. I want to experience it.
Okay, so just because you haven't been, so I'm guessing you've traveled a lot, like around
I
Africa.
have. I've done a fair chunk, over 100 countries so far, and many of
Wow.
them on yeah.
Wow. Okay, okay. We've never had Madagascar before, and we've had so many others. We've had Senegal, Seychelles, but not Madagascar. But okay, that's new. But yeah, thank you for doing this again, Kristin. That brings us to the end of the episode. I hope you've enjoyed it as well. But yeah, thank you.